Leaders from the world's 20 largest economies, that's the G20, are gathering in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to discuss the world's most pressing challenges. The focus on the summit will be social inclusion, global governance reform, and energy transitions. Now, the summit comes as the United Nations COP29 climate talks enter their second week, with negotiators debating a new goal for how much money richer nations will cough up to confront climate change. Now, Brazil took over the G20 Presidency from India in New Delhi last year. The G20 Summit is taking place amid global uncertainty and turbulence. I mean, if we look at the turbulence, we're talking conflicts in Ukraine, in the Middle East and the Sahel. The Director of Global Government Affairs and CSR, SAP Africa, Sunil Geness, joins us in studio to discuss this matter. Sunil, pleasure to have you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having us this morning.
I mean, we look at the G20 and we've been reading some of the comments from viewers coming in, and it seems that their issues are more locally based, pressing issues. But this, of course, is a global forum, and it seems that the issues that the globe are going through are very much so what we are going through. But perhaps you want to talk about the significance of a G20, their meeting and their influence.
Thanks, Leanne. I think it's an amazing time to be alive. South Africa has a seat at the table which we've never had before. And we represent the continent in the broader sense, and of course the global south. I think President Ramaphosa has made it clear that he'll focus on sort of three pillars, which is solidarity, equity, and sustainability. And this event that's taking place currently is more a handing over of the baton, because South Africa will take over the G20 from the first week of December. Brazil, obviously with South Africa, are also part of the BRICS bloc. And even further than that, as you mentioned earlier on, the COP29 is happening at the moment in Baku in Azerbaijan. But we'll come back to that. Brazil focused more on the social aspects, creating a fund also for misinformation that they found to be quite relevant at the time. However, there are critics who say that the presidency of Brazil at this stage has not revealed its benefits to the global south per se. Now, we need to take into consideration that there's differences on a global scale and what's happening locally. For South Africa to be part of this is a significant moment. We have a great opportunity to leverage financing, to leverage the will of the, what I would call the developed countries, to bring to bear some of our developmental agenda items. And I suppose we should look back to the UNGA, which took place in September, where the SecGen mentioned that the SDGs themselves are being misaligned, and we haven't achieved more than 80% of them. So many of these factors remain at a stratospheric level, and the granularity is where the rubber hits the road, so to speak. And that is where South Africa will have to pick up that baton from what is happening in Brazil and take that into our presidency.
Yeah. Look, I mean, if we look at the power that South Africa has gotten over the years, and I talk to its inclusion in BRICS and the growth of BRICS, it's been an exponential growth in BRICS, in their economies, and now we're moving into BRICS Plus, which is going to be a very interesting dynamic. And you've got these countries coming together, and many say, you know, when you look at the G7, they still contain all the power in the world, and yet, when you look at the shifts, it's happening. That shift is happening. How uncomfortable does this make the G20 meeting?
I think it will, because from our perspective as South Africa, President Ramaphosa is pushing multilateralism. We've seen the rise of what we call nationalism, where people focus on their own countries and the benefits of their own countries. But with this multilateralism, what we're saying is more regulated policies around the world that make sense for people, greater equality, a transfer of financing to address issues such as climate. And I think you're going to have this epoch where there is some sort of tension that develops with those already who are in the have space and the current global south, which is looking to pursue its own agenda. Obviously, over a period of time, we're going to see the differences. We just entered into the G20. We're just entering into our presidency, so to speak. But over a period of time, we should be able to erode some of this and start making valuable steps in the right direction.
Because that's what we want. We want to see valuable decisions and steps being made. I mean, if we look at Brazil and their intention over this time that they held the presidency, their promises and their achievements, I mean, what has managed to be achieved by Brazil?
So we must understand that the G20 is also a soapbox. Now, when you get on the soapbox, you say whatever's in your mind.
Indeed.
To endear your immediate population, endear yourself within blocks like BRICS and G20. But 12 months is a very short period of time to bring about global change. You need protagonists, you need allyship, you need to be able to use the BRICS bloc quite strategically in this environment. And our focus on the global south is critical. The AU is a member of this together with the EU. AU has the Agenda 2063, which talks in broad terms about development of Africa and a prosperous Africa, a safe Africa. These are the kind of things that we will have to focus on going into the future. And let's not forget technology. We're in the age of AI at the moment. Even the presidency of South Africa needs to look at that and how we can harmonize, and South Africa can undertake technology diplomacy on the continent within frameworks such as the African Union Artificial Intelligence Framework, and then bedding that down so that we have some commonality in standards and practices that work together with the rest of the world.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that elephant coming in the shape of a Republican named Trump. And he, of course, is coming in. And very much so what you're discussing right now. I mean, we're talking about the whole gathering of COP29 taking place now. And there's great risk that he's going to pull out of whatever decision is made, and they're going to pull out of this Paris Climate Accord. The same thing goes for the issue that the Brazilian president is trying to push here, and he really is behind this global alliance against hunger. And many fear that this is going to be overshadowed by the knowledge that Trump is opposed to many of these inclusions. What is this arrival of Trump next year do for G20 and South Africa that's going to be at the helm of it?
He's a red herring, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he will bring about some tensions that we don't even consider right now. Every day you hear a different mindset.
Yeah.
He changes his mind on the fly between getting to a meeting, saying whatever is going to happen. But it's going to be exciting at the same time, because the world will have to stand up collectively to some of these practices. We have got to take steps. Even though the dollar is almost the instrument, the monetary instrument being used globally, critical steps will have to be taken by both the BRICS bloc, the G7, the G20, and they're going to have to muscle some of these intentions out of the way. To Trump's credit, he is bringing in more private sector into the mix. He's trying to modernize government. He's trying to reduce red tape. I mean, the introduction of Elon Musk, President Ramaphosa met him at the UNGA. These are positive signs that they are open to innovation. But ultimately, what has happened in the last 60 years since the World War, 60 plus years, is not going to again be changed overnight. The allyships are critical. The US itself, with Trump at its forefront, is going to drive a lot of the policies that you've seen in the past. I've just seen that there was some pronouncement that he will prevent certain Africans from getting visas to the US. Which already creates a challenge in its own. Now, the African Union will have to look at this from a governance perspective. And I think that's why Ramaphosa is also pushing this multilateralism, where we are able to hold countries accountable, irrespective of the leadership in place and individuals.
Yeah. I want to talk about, and our time is not on our side, but something we have to touch on is the rising geopolitical tensions in the world and the wars that we are seeing raging out of control. I mean, between Gaza, between Ukraine, this is a very big issue and major issues that need to be dealt with. We cannot just ignore them, and I imagine the G20 leaders will have a look at them. And now we've seen, what's happened yesterday with US President Joe Biden allowing these missiles and saying, use them. And this is as Trump is about to come in and say he wants to end this war. No one knows how, but he wants to end it. So all of the tensions, and of course South Africa's stance and views on Gaza as opposed to Israel. I mean, help me understand that. How's this going to work?
The world has bottomed out.
Oh, man.
Right? Let's just say that. Things can only improve from here. We've seen the worst. I don't think we will ever, the pendulum will never swing in the opposite direction as badly as it's done. But the peace processes in both these regions that you mentioned, in particular, there's more than 3 regions already at war, has to take place, because this is called contagion. It'll spread into other regions. We're going to see the interruption of supply chains which take place. But the United Nations needs to step up its own game. right? It has a mandate. It is the bastion of multilateralism. And it must use the collective voices of all the countries, the 206 countries that are part of it, to be able to drive change in these regions. These conflicts don't bode well for anybody. South Africa's position in terms of the Gaza conflict that is happening is embedded in some of what has happened in the past. It's embedded in terms of where you see the policies and processes that have been undertaken over a period of time. They're one country, right? There are 205 other countries that are part and parcel of this global sort of system. What else are the other countries doing to reduce the warfare that is happening, not only there, but in other parts of the world, and reducing massacre and the loss of lives?
Yeah.
I think that's the questions we need to ask ourselves.
Yeah, we do. And also, I really do look forward to the robust discussions, hopefully, that take place there. Then finally, before I let you go, I mean, I know that Brazil, and I mentioned it earlier, they very, very much so wanted this whole global alliance against hunger. This is something. But at the heart of it is taxation of the ultra-wealthy. Do you think this proposal to tax the ultra-wealthy a minimum tax of 2%, think this is going to fly?
I just saw that Elon Musk paid $10 billion in taxes in the last year.
Yeah.
So if you take the ultra-wealthy and you apply a tax to them, or just take that percentage of his tax burden that is paid, it could aggregate into a substantial fund, which could be deployed transparently using systems, for example, like SAP. We work with the World Food Program as well, to deploy the food and the other services into regions that need them most. So the wealthy, by the way, do everything not to be taxed.
Yeah.
They set up in the United States LLCs, here you have PTYs to be able to cover them. So those systems themselves have to be unlocked in order to get the most out of the wealthy.
Oh, let's see what happens. It's going to be interesting. There's no two ways about it. Thank you. Thanks for coming in and chatting to us. That's Sunil Geness, who's the Director of Global Government Affairs and CSR at SAP Africa. The G20 Summit in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It starts today, goes on through the day to tomorrow. And then, of course, South Africa takes over. But that presidency, we take over on the 1st of December. And it'll be interesting to see what's discussed now. And then South Africa's term. Not going to be an easy one, but certainly a powerful one, hopefully. Let's take a break. News after this.